It started like any ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The sun hung high over a sleepy street in suburban Virginia, where traffic lights blinked lazily and birds chirped without urgency. Officer Mike Henderson leaned on the side of his patrol car, sipping lukewarm coffee and scrolling his phone, when the dispatcher's voice crackled through the radio. Unit 6, respond to a report of a suspicious woman loitering near the Oak Ridge Jewelry Boutique. Caller says she's refusing to leave the front steps. Mike rolled his eyes. Probably another Karen, he thought, or someone filming TikToks. He glanced over at his partner, Officer Jenna Rhodes, who gave a tired shrug. They'd had a slow day, until now. Minutes later, they pulled up to the storefront. A woman stood calmly near the entrance, arms folded, wearing a sleek navy blue coat, sunglasses and heels that clicked elegantly against the concrete. She wasn't pacing. She wasn't yelling. She looked composed and annoyed. Mike stepped out first. "Ma'am, store management asked you to leave. You can't just stand here blocking their entrance." The woman turned her head slowly, lowered her sunglasses, and met his eyes with a look that didn't flinch. "I'm waiting for someone. I'll be gone in a minute." "Ma'am, we're asking you to leave now," Jenna added, her tone sharper. "Either move along or we'll have to detain you." The woman exhaled, long and steady. "You really don't want to do that." Mike exchanged a quick glance with Jenna. Her hand moved to her cuffs. The woman didn't resist. She didn't even raise her voice. But something about her calmness, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are, should have made them pause. They didn't. Within seconds, they had her hands behind her back, cuffs tight on her wrists, guiding her toward the patrol car. As they did, she simply said, "Call my husband." Mike smirked. "You'll get your one call." She turned her head slightly. "Number." "You'll want to call him now," he laughed. "Oh, yeah? And who's your husband?" The woman looked forward again. "General Marcus R. Langston, Pentagon Chief of Staff." The name hit like a bomb. Jenna froze. Mike's jaw tensed. And that's when it all began to unravel. Mike's smirk faded the second he heard the name. "Wait, General Langston? As in that Langston?" he muttered under his breath. Jenna's eyes darted to him, panic beginning to simmer behind her calm exterior. The woman, now seated in the back of their patrol car, didn't say another word. She just stared out the window, her composure intact. No threats, no anger, just quiet disappointment. And that made it worse. Mike stepped away and quickly tapped into the in-car laptop, typing the name. There it was. General Marcus R. Langston, 4-star general, Pentagon Chief of Staff, highly decorated, a man whose influence stretched beyond military circles into the highest levels of U.S. government, and he had one wife. Her name was Elise Langston. Jenna's voice trembled. "Mike, we need to call this in." Now Mike hesitated. Maybe she's bluffing." Jenna shook her head. "Do you really want to bet your badge on that?" Still handcuffed, Elise glanced toward them through the rearview mirror. "He'll be here soon," she said calmly. "Or you could save yourselves the trouble and make the call now." Mike sighed and grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 6. We have a possible misidentification. Suspect claims to be the wife of General Langston, requesting verification." There was a long silence. Then, "Unit 6, please hold." Minutes passed, the kind of minutes that stretch endlessly when you know you've made a mistake you can't undo. Jenna paced. Mike rubbed his forehead. Elise said nothing. Then the radio crackled again. "Unit 6, confirm location. Stand by. You are instructed not to release the suspect or make further contact until Pentagon security arrives." Mike stared at the radio. "Did they just say Pentagon security?" "Yes, sir. Confirming they're en route." Jenna's knees nearly buckled. "Oh my God, what did we do?" Mike swallowed hard. "We just handcuffed the Pentagon chief's wife outside a jewelry store." Elise, still in the back seat, finally broke the silence. "You didn't just make a mistake," she said softly. "You made a career-ending one. And she wasn't wrong. Because what neither officer knew was that this wasn't the first time someone underestimated Elise Langston, and it would be the last. The black SUV pulled up 10 minutes later. Fast, sleek, and unmarked. Two men in suits stepped out, scanning the scene with quiet intensity. They weren't local police. They weren't even federal agents. These were Pentagon men, and their presence meant one thing. This was no ordinary situation. One of them approached Officer Mike Henderson with a badge already in hand. "Agent Parks, Department of Defense Security. Where is Mrs. Langston?" Mike gestured nervously toward the patrol car. "She's, still in the back seat." Parks didn't respond. He simply walked to the car, opened the door, and extended a respectful hand. Elise stepped out, still elegant, still calm, as if she were stepping out of a limo, not a cruiser. The other agent removed the handcuffs swiftly, carefully. "Ma'am," Parks said, voice even, "General Langston is en route. We apologize for the delay." Elise gave a curt nod. "They didn't believe me. I told them. They didn't care." The second agent turned sharply toward Mike and Jenna. "You cuffed her?" Mike tried to explain. "She was standing outside a store. They said she was refusing to leave. We didn't know who she—" "She told you her name, didn't she?" the agent interrupted. Mike's mouth opened, then closed. "Yes, but we didn't think—" "You didn't think," the agent repeated coldly. "That much is clear." Jenna, pale and visibly shaking now, looked at Elise. "We didn't mean any disrespect, ma'am. We were just following protocol." "Protocol?" Elise said finally, her voice quiet but firm. "Is that what you call treating a woman standing peacefully outside a shop like a criminal? You didn't ask for ID. You didn't even check my name properly. You saw a black woman standing alone and assumed trouble. That's not protocol. That's bias." The agent said nothing. The silence was broken only when another vehicle pulled up, this one escorted by two more black SUVs. General Marcus Langston stepped out. Tall, commanding, face carved with years of military precision and burden, he looked first at his wife, then at the two officers. His eyes were unreadable, but the chill in the air grew sharper. Elise didn't speak. She just walked to his side. The general turned to Parks. "Get their badge numbers. I'll handle it from here." Mike felt a cold sweat trickle down his spine. The fallout had just begun. General Langston's presence was like a storm settling over the quiet street. Not loud, not explosive, just heavy, with consequences. He approached the two officers slowly, hands clasped behind his back, eyes locked on Mike first, then Jenna. Neither could hold his gaze. His military uniform, pressed to perfection, bore rows of medals, each representing battles they could never imagine. But this wasn't a battlefield, and yet it felt like defeat was already certain. "What's your name, officer?" Langston asked. Mike straightened reflexively. "Officer Mike Henderson, sir." "And you?" "Officer Jenna Rhodes, sir." Langston nodded once. "I want you both to listen carefully. I've spent decades defending this country. I've seen war. I've watched soldiers make the ultimate sacrifice. And still, the thing that breaks my heart the most is seeing my wife, a woman who's given just as much to this nation, treated like a criminal on her own soil, by the very people sworn to protect her." Jenna whispered, "We didn't know who she was." "And that's the problem," Langston interrupted. "You didn't know. And so you assumed the worst. You saw her standing there, not causing harm, not breaking any laws, and your first instinct was to cuff her. No conversation, no basic decency." Elise, now standing beside her husband, watched silently, her expression unreadable. Mike tried to muster his voice. "Sir, I sincerely apologize." Langston's voice was calm. "Apologies are easy, accountability isn't." He turned to the agents. "Contact Internal Affairs. File a formal complaint. I want this documented, reviewed, and escalated." Agent Parks nodded immediately, already pulling out his phone. Jenna's voice cracked. "Please, General, this was a mistake. Don't let this end our careers." Langston paused, then looked at Elise. "It's not my decision." All eyes shifted to her. For the first time, she stepped forward. "I'm not here to destroy your lives," she said softly, "but I also won't protect a system that allows people like me to be treated like criminals just because we don't fit the image of who's safe. You didn't ask questions. You didn't listen. You saw a stereotype, not a person." She let that sit for a moment. "Whatever happens next is about more than me. It's about who you choose to be after this. Neither officer responded, but they both knew the damage had already been done. The news didn't stay quiet for long. By that evening, leaked body cam footage made its way to national media. Networks ran headlines like Pentagon chief's wife wrongfully detained by local police and mistaken identity or racial profiling. Social media exploded with outrage. Hashtags like Monsieur Elise Langston, Us cuffed without cause, and Justice in uniform began trending within hours. In the footage, Elise never raised her voice. She didn't argue. She simply spoke with clarity, grace, and unshakable dignity, which made the officer's actions look even worse. The image of her being handcuffed in heels and escorted like a criminal spread like wildfire. Back at the precinct, Mike and Jenna sat in a small conference room, blinds drawn, waiting for the internal review board. Neither spoke. Both knew things were spiraling beyond control. Captain Ruiz finally entered, his face tight with frustration and disbelief. "Do you two have any idea what you've done?" he asked coldly. "We didn't know who she was," Jenna said again, her voice raw. Ruiz slammed a folder onto the table. "It's not about who she was. It's about what you assumed. You ignored procedure. You escalated without cause. And now our department is national news. For all the wrong reasons." Mike buried his face in his hands. "Sir, are we being fired?" "Not yet," Ruiz replied, "but IA is recommending suspension, and the Civilian Oversight Committee wants full disciplinary hearings," Jenna whispered. "But she said she didn't want to ruin our lives." Ruiz narrowed his eyes. "She didn't. You did. You made the choice to act without thinking, and now you're living the consequences." Meanwhile, across town, Elise sat in her living room, sipping tea as her husband spoke with legal advisors. She didn't want revenge, but she wanted change. She'd spent years funding scholarships, mentoring underprivileged girls, speaking about equality, and now her own experience had become a symbol of the very thing she fought against. Her phone buzzed. A message from a civil rights attorney read, "If you want to push for reform, now is the moment. The nation is listening." Elise set her cup down and looked out the window. This wasn't just about two officers anymore. It was about the system that trained them to see her as a threat before they saw her as human. A week later, Elise stood behind a podium at a national press conference in Washington, D.C. Cameras flashed. Reporters filled the room. The seal of the Department of Justice glimmered behind her, flanked by military officials and civil rights leaders. She wore a simple black suit. No designer logos, no jewelry, just quiet authority. "I never intended to be here," she began, her voice steady. "I didn't ask for the cameras, the headlines, or the outrage. But I'm here because what happened to me, a calm woman waiting outside a store, happens every day to people without my name, my connections, or my husband." A hush fell across the room. The difference is, most of them don't have someone who shows up in a convoy of SUVs to demand justice. Most of them don't get calls from senators or apologies from departments. They get silence. Or worse, they get forgotten. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "I'm not here to ruin lives. I'm here to change them. This isn't about vengeance. It's about visibility, about asking the hard questions. Why does a uniform sometimes come with bias? Why do some officers see danger before they see dignity?" Applause broke out, soft at first, then growing. In the audience, General Langston watched with pride, though his expression remained stoic. He knew his wife didn't need him to speak for her. She never had. Behind the scenes, the fallout continued. Officer Mike Henderson submitted his resignation before his hearing. Jenna Rhodes, after weeks of investigation, received a 6-month suspension and mandatory bias retraining. Neither returned to the street. Elise, meanwhile, launched a new initiative, the Langston Project, a nationwide reform program aimed at training officers in de-escalation, implicit bias, and community accountability. It quickly gained support, funding, and traction in major cities. But for Elise, the most meaningful change came quietly. Weeks later, outside that same jewelry boutique, she walked past the entrance where it all began. A new officer stood there, holding the door open for a young black woman juggling bags in a stroller. He smiled and said, "Take your time, ma'am." It was small, but it mattered, because sometimes change doesn't start with a law. It starts with the decision to see someone fully before judging them at all.